Hey, there we go. I got it to work.
All right, look at that. Really is the little
All right.
things.
What's it?
So how's it going,
Everybody, we're
fellas?
officially. It is the little things. We're
How you
live.
guys
Welcome,
doing?
everybody. Episode. Oh, let's see. Good. Let's see. Anything wants to work? There's our buddy Ben.
What's up, Ben? Always good to see you. Thanks as always for the support.
Hello, Ben.
All right. Anyway, for the sticky of it. After the technical difficulties, welcome to episode 2. I got my buddy Peter here, and this week we've got a famed. What would you say your background is there, Chris? Not a movie writer,
Well,
director,
writer,
prop maker,
writer,
everything.
man,
Writer,
person, human being.
Like it. Writer Man. That's a good
Man,
title.
human.
Writer Man. That sticks.
Yeah,
on Earth.
that's my superhero.
Yeah, Writer Man.
Writer Man.
That one guy.
Writer Man.
And writer of that. Yep. Writer of that Texas Blood, Brutal Dark.
That is correct.
All right. Peter. Yes. Peter, go ahead and jump into it for a second. I got some crazy stuff happening here.
Yeah, no problem. All right. So as everyone may have heard, if you haven't, That Texas Blood is back on June 30th with Arc 2. Chris, what can you tell us about that? Can you give us any little hints? I know there's like a preview out there, little bit of a summary, but what little tidbits can you give us?
Well, what I can tell you is that it's sort of an exploration of a past event that haunts Joe Bob to this very day, and it's born out of my love of the TV movies of the 1970s, which are all sort of these horror tinged they sometimes have like crime involved in them, and I sort of thought it'd be fun. What if this memory of Joe Bob's was in fact, hey Jacob, was a
we got Jacob the Man himself there.
Yeah.
Writer Man and
memory
artist
of Joe
man.
Bob's was one of these sort of TV movie kind of ideas, but obviously done in a Texas Blood kind of way. So it's not as 70s or cheesy, but sort of filtered through our lens.
Yeah, so you're kind of taking your love for that and filtering it through your style and the style of That Texas Blood, making it its completely own thing. That's really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm honestly really excited about it. There's a character that we're going to introduce. He lends his name to the title of the arc, Eversol. His name is Harlan Eversol. He's a private investigator. He's based out of Los Angeles in 1981, and he sort of investigates, your usual missing persons case, but he also has a, penchant for getting involved in things that are a little strange.
Interesting.
And there is a cult on the loose in Ambrose County in 1981, and Eversol comes in with some thoughts.
Got it. And so are we going to see a little bit of his style clashing with Joe Bob's style then? They're going to, reluctantly have to work together a little bit?
I would say that the sheriff's office has a reluctant relationship with Eversol. Joe Bob, not so much. Joe Bob likes Eversol. But the sheriff's office in general, Sheriff Sam Cooper, who we've seen in the dream sequence in issue 1, he comes back and he's got a real, problem with this guy. But, that's for later issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't want to reveal too much.
Right.
That's most of the excitement is getting to read that, waiting for the next issue to come out. Now, the dream sequence you bring up, that's interesting. Does that have any relation to our mystery man with the shotgun when we have our two characters telling a story around the campfire in issue 1?
It doesn't exactly, but we do mention it at one point in this arc. More specifically of what happened.
That was one
before
little
you came
thread
on,
that
we were
you
talking
laid
about it. We're like,
down.
you know what?
That was a thread that you laid down that I've always been curious about. Like, where is that little thread going to lead to?
Yeah. Well, I was actually just talking to somebody about that, and one of the most interesting things to me is, like, for example, in it's not the most beloved Indiana Jones movie, but in like there it is.
Yep, that's it.
That guy.
Yep.
But yeah, so in like Temple of Doom, right? You're introduced to Short Round, who has clearly had a relationship with Indiana Jones before the movie had started,
yeah.
right? So that's the kind of thing that I love, is you introduce
Right.
a thing that has clearly had a history with this character, and I feel like that's what we were trying to do with Sam and.
Oh, absolutely.
And
Because I mean, ever since I've been left to wonder, I've just been intrigued. What's going on there? What is that all about? That is very interesting to me.
Yeah, we debated it for about
it
20 minutes before you came on.
Yeah, I couldn't decide if maybe I missed something. I went back and read again. I didn't think that I missed anything.
No,
so I'm excited to see that potentially explored a little more.
Well, yeah, and it's the thing with the shotgun is that's what obviously makes Joe Bob the sheriff in the county. And I won't say too much about that, but whatever happens, that happens in 1989.
Right.
Oh.
So Sheriff Sam is sheriff for a little bit longer.
Oh.
Because the second arc, that's going to be 1981. So are we thinking a couple more arcs here? We got a long-term plan for that Texas Blood?
Yeah, I mean, the way that Jacob and I are thinking about it is that it's going to be 30 issues total. I mean, I keep putting that on myself.
That's a healthy story, man. That's a healthy story.
But I mean, that's if people keep buying it. If people like it. But yeah, I mean, the way that I imagined the series from the start was that it's set in this fictional county, and we can kind of explore the history of that and how it relates to what's happening in current day Ambrose County with Joe Bob. So like these past events all kind of come into play. The original title of the series was Past as Prologue, and that's kind of how I've always thought about it, was that the past always comes to play.
I was going to say already, it seems like the theme tends to be that nothing stays buried.
Yeah, absolutely.
As far as you want to run away from things, everything always comes back around, and every thing comes back to haunt you.
Poor Randy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, poor Randy.
Randy. So that Texas Blood, I know we talk a lot behind the scenes, you and me, but this is our first face-to-face kind of. But that Texas Blood, you said, was a screenplay originally? Like you had written it to be a movie or a TV show?
Yeah. So
so
in 2016, I had written and directed a short film called Thesis, which if anybody wants to see it, they can DM me on Twitter and I'll send it to them. I'm like pretty happy with it. I'm not the most happy with some aspects of it, but it is what it is. We made it for very little money. It was like made for $900. Filming when we filmed in one day, so I wanted to do a follow-up, and I wanted it to be this catalyst that would bring us into making a feature. And so that was originally going to be our second arc. So that A Brother's Conscience was going to be called That Texas Blood. It was a feature film, and I thought it'd be smart to do a short film that would introduce us to the world and the characters. So I called it Past as Prologue, and I made it about the sheriff, who was a side character in that feature film. And in so doing, I really got to flesh out Joe Bob, and I liked him so much that I ditched the other feature idea and tried to do a whole feature off of him. But we couldn't find funding because it was, it's expensive to shoot in Texas, to have a bunch of people travel to Texas, and then so they'd have to fly into El Paso. And if we're shooting in Marfa, which is where we would have been shooting, which is where Ambrose County is, based off of,
right,
that's a, couple hours trip, back and forth. And if you're bringing all your equipment, to the location, I mean, that takes time. That takes money.
Easy task. No easy task.
Yeah,
Right.
so we just were not having luck with it. After a year, Jacob had already done concept art for the short film because I would wanted to pitch it, and I thought, great way to pitch it is visually, and just still
Right.
nothing was coming, and we were we were promised a little bit of money here or there, and then it would just like fall through or whatever. So after about a year, I just emailed Jacob again and said, hey, do you want to just do this as a comic book? And that's where the comic came from, was just out of frustration with the process, just wanting to tell the story
Well,
and
hey,
loving what Jacob had done already. So it was a
I'm
no-brainer.
really glad to see your ideas, fleshed out though, because I know I'm not alone, but really it's such a gripping story. It's very, the story grabs you, the art grabs you. It works very, very well together. Was Jacob someone like immediately you had in mind to be your partner in crime on this project?
I mean, I had nobody else in mind. So when I found Jacob was when I was reading Kill or Be Killed.
Okay.
The great, Ed Brubaker, Sean Phillips book.
So good.
And he was
Right.
drawing the backups.
Brubaker Phillips.
Yes. So he was drawing the backups, which were film essays, and there would be an illustration or two, and I loved what he was doing there. And so I figured, if I was looking for somebody to do concept art, I thought he would be fantastic. What he had done in those backups would be perfect for concept art. And sure enough, when I reached out to him, I sent him the script. I said, if you like the script, maybe you'll want to do it. And he liked the script, and he did it. And it was, the stuff he did was perfect. It's on the Patreon. I think, Wes, you've seen it. It's it's really great stuff. It's more painterly than what we have in the comic, which is more obviously comic booky,
Right?
more stylized, but
much more fleshed out.
Yeah. But I didn't have anybody else in mind ever for it. And yet, just in trying to get the story out there, I mean, comic book wasn't too far off for me. I wrote one story that was a comic book story as like a script just to see if I could do it, and it was a Scarecrow tale, like a one-shot Scarecrow tale, Batman villain.
Okay.
Thing.
Very cool.
And so I'd written a comic strip before, so it wasn't too far off for me. And I go to the comic shop literally every Wednesday, so I'm always there. So it was like it's one of my passions. So it wasn't too far off to be like, hey, let's do this as a comic book instead of a movie. And plus, it's cheaper to make a comic book than it is to make a movie. So
yeah,
it still costs money, but it is less expensive.
Right. Now, having said that, are you finding yourself enjoying writing in the comic book, style? Is that something you can see yourself telling more stories in this medium in the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of rewiring. There's a little bit of rewiring involved, trying to like reframe my brain into thinking.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I absolutely think so. I mean, and it seems like people like what I'm writing, so I'm like, maybe this is the thing for me, and I definitely enjoy it. I mean, and I love the fans. Our readers. I love interacting with everybody and seeing that everybody's liking it. And I honestly, there's no greater email than getting a whole package of art, and then seeing it inked, and then seeing it colored, and then lettered. It's like
the process
like
of
Christmas
seeing your
morning
ideas come to life has got to be really exciting.
Yeah. It's I've talked to a couple other creators about this. It's just such a personal experience because it's literally a one-to-one experience versus in a film where it's like you're dealing with a
got to go across
cinematographer,
so
an
many
actor, or
different
whatever.
desks, and everyone's got to approve it. The studio, the screenwriters, it goes through rewrite.
Yeah.
So,
well, I never got that far, but it is definitely, even just in a very small on a small level, it's still very involved, and there's multiple hats involved, and just multiple people, multiple opinions, and but with a comic, it's just me and Jacob,
Yeah.
And so what you're seeing is really just our thoughts on a page, and I kind of love that. It's just you're literally seeing what we thought would work. And Image just they're great in just letting us do whatever we want. I mean, for good or ill, but it's
Yeah.
what you're seeing on the page is just that's us. So
what's that like working with, I mean, how closely have you been in contact with, Todd McFarlane? Has he, stuck his head in and been like, hey, love what you're doing?
not once, but I would love to talk with him.
Yeah, I mean,
if I was ever given the chance.
Talk
Todd,
about
if you're listening,
the comic
you heard the
community.
man.
Todd, we love you.
Oh, I could have like a 6-hour conversation with Todd. Just that guy's mind. Just
such an interesting
fascinates me.
If I could show him the Spawn action figures that I had when I was a kid, I think he would be thrilled. But yeah, I mean, it's I talk mostly with Eric Stevenson, the publisher.
Okay.
And to not bother him, I often talk with Marla, his assistant, and currently talking with Kat Salazar, the PR, for our next series or your arc. So yeah, I mean, I've never talked with Tom McFarlane or Robert Kirkman. These people, I would love to at some point. Maybe at a convention, maybe at some point.
Yeah, once those get swinging up again.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I see that.
I imagine you have better luck coming up to Todd than Robert.
What was that?
Oh yeah, I did see that. I said you probably have better luck talking to Todd than Robert Kirkman right now with everything he's got going on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with Invincible taking off, Kirkman's going to be a hot commodity.
Kirkman took it.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, whatever works. I hope one day to have a little bit of his success.
All right. Well,
are you getting there?
Is there, now you've mentioned Spawn, you've mentioned your Scarecrow one shot that you were working on. What are some bucket list characters? If you could pick, like, some nostalgic characters you loved as a kid, what would be some bucket list characters you would love an opportunity to get a chance to write?
It's funny. I don't really know what I would like existing IP that I would want to be writing. There's a really silly character that I love called Buana Beast.
Yes, all right.
And I have like an idea for a Buana Beast thing because I know that there's Grant Morrison in his initial run on Animal Man tried to like do a serious take on Buana Beast with he gets anthrax. But here's the thing is that I sort of was like thinking that it'd be fun to treat him almost like the the Lee Falk Phantom,
I love
sort
that.
of do like a jungle adventure and almost have it be a little bit more comedic. Which is I mean, there's definitely comedic beats in that Texas Blood, but it's not like it's overly dramatic and serious. So it'd be fun to kind of write something like that because I mean I grew up on Mel Brooks and Monty Python and
that'll do
I'm
it.
a big comedy fan. So it would definitely be fun to play in that sort of wheelhouse where it's more of like a fun, funny adventure.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That is such a left field character. I'm really happy to hear that one.
And honestly, it's like I feel like that's kind of a little more interesting for me. I mean, obviously, it'd be really cool, like playing the wheelhouse or in the sandbox of Superman or something. But that also comes with the classic: with great power comes great responsibility.
Well, I mean, that's
whatever you want.
That's the thing with writing for these characters who have been around for 80 years. You're having to, you're kind of restricted to certain guidelines. Like, like this character doesn't do this. He does do this. Whereas, when you create an original character, if you're writing a character that hasn't had many, appearances on the page, you have a little bit more freedom to do what, what's in your head, what you think you want that character to do.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole lot of, I just come up with ideas like fairly frequently, but I I'll either like write down either just the idea or whatever. So I have things floating around that I just got to work on. But like I don't write too many superhero ideas, and the ones that I do have for original ideas, they're more like quirky. I'd say I have like an idea for like a golden age superhero, sort of, not even superhero really, but almost like the Shadow or the Spider or something like that, who is still in his city, but it's like the Silver Age, so it's all like these cheesy, like Atomic Age, goofy characters, and there is like a superhero, like a superpowered hero in that city. And so they expect him to just like come and like foil their plans and then like throw him in prison. But this Golden Age superhero just like straight up kills them or whatever.
Right.
And so I'm like, that's like an idea that I have.
Almost like
guy...
seeing someone like the Shadow pop up in like, Adam West's Gotham, it's
yeah, exactly. Like,
oh, the commissioner is on the phone.
Yeah, and then he ends up on the run because he's like killed somebody, So those are the kind of like superhero ideas that I have.
Now there's an idea. Batman 66 meets the Shadow. Let's get that done. We need to see that now.
Yeah.
66 meets the Shadow. So awesome.
I mean, because if you look at like those sort of Dick Sprang Batman, issues from the early 60s, late 50s, or any of the Kurt Swan Superman stuff, like you see those sorts of like just like aliens with antenna and stuff, and it'd be fun to sort of be like, right, what if Batman from 39 was dealing with these guys? Yeah. The Batman that still carried a gun. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, in the Silver Age, you're talking an era where every issue Batman's turning into a baby. The next issue, Batman goes to space. The next issue, Batman's at home, and it's like a TV sitcom where it's Bat Dad and the Bat Family, and it's like an episode of Family Matters. The Silver Age gets really wacky. So to even think about like a dark version of Batman and interacting in that kind of environment, that's something I would love to see.
Let's hope I actually write the issues.
Hey, you know what? I will be there day one to support that book. Let me tell you.
Yeah, even if you don't, I just want Kickstarted. I'll sign on right away.
All right, you got it.
All right. So you
I want to jump back.
Yeah, go ahead, Wes.
Go ahead, Peter.
No, all you, man.
No, go ahead, man.
Well, I was just curious.
So
we're kind of at the end of the pandemic. Hopefully, lockdowns are lifting. Has any of that affected the way you write, the things you write about? Are you channeling any of these lockdown experiences, pandemic experiences into your creative process or the stories you want to tell?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's affected the stories that I'm writing. One specifically, I literally have an idea that's sort of based around the time period, but that's only one contained thing. But I wouldn't say that it has affected the style of my writing. It's definitely, being in lockdown and sort of like the mental strain of that has definitely affected my like output. I feel like sometimes you just sort of get in your own head sometimes, and then you just can't get the work done. And I mean, my girlfriend writes reports for financial reports and stuff like that, and she has the same exact problem. So it's just, and I'm sure everybody out there has similar problems. And, this is all small potatoes compared to people who have actually had, COVID and had to deal with those aspects of it. But yeah, I mean, definitely it's affected me in terms of like my mental health and, just getting the work out there and, the speed with which I get it done. I still think that, the quality for me, at least like in terms of my own personal, like, quality, I feel like it's still there for myself. I feel like our next arc is going to be really good, but it took me longer to write it than it usually would. I had the whole thing planned out in my mind, but actually writing down the pages and like breaking it down and panel to panel, it just took me longer to get there. And sometimes I'd write, a page and be sitting on that for 2 weeks until I finally figured out, okay, this is how it goes.
Right.
Which with Brother's Conscience, I was, I basically like sat down at my kitchen table and wrote that boom, 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 boom. Like it really just, because that was an idea that I had forever. And I also have had this idea for a while now at this point. I've been talking about it since we basically launched. But it's just, I don't know. I feel like it's essentially the pandemic sort of taking its own toll on things. Just, you can't live your life like you were.
Right.
And it's, it's obviously it's just a change. I don't know how to.
I mean, that's really the only way to say it. It's just, I've noticed reading through comics sometimes it's just, it's jarring to see, background characters, walking down the street wearing a face mask, or, a little more references to like global pandemics and just different ways that it's creeped its way into all of our forms of media. You turn on, any sort of TV show. My fiance is a big fan of the show The Rookie, and we're watching an episode, all the characters are wearing masks, and it's just like, you showed this to me a year and a half ago, I would have been like, this is the weirdest thing ever. Now it's just like, yeah, you know what, kind of weird seeing people without their masks now.
Yeah, I mean, that was a thing that I had thought about when the pandemic started, was that, do we have to start writing masks onto people?
It's a valid question.
Yeah, it's a strange thing to consider, because I mean, in a year, how many people will still be wearing masks? I'm sure that there will be a good amount, but I mean, I don't know if it will be to the extent that it is currently, especially since, the CDC is saying that if you're in like a small, like localized gathering, you don't have to wear a mask. They recommend it for if you're in a large gathering or whatever.
Yeah, I've thought a couple times what it's going to be like, 10, 20 years from now, to pull out a comic from, 2020. And for example, Ice Cream Man had the quarantine comics, and all about like tales from inside quarantine. It's just like, what's that going to read like in 10, 20 years? It's very interesting to me, because I've always thought of comics as a really good insight into what's going on in the world. You go back to like the 40s, and, you got Batman, Superman on the cover of comics trying to sell war bonds, and now, to a lesser extent, it's not a war, but in 10, 20 years, we're going to be looking back at these comics of, characters wearing masks and in quarantine and talking about like the big pandemic of 2020. And it's just very interesting. It's almost, we're living history, Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting time. I mean, it's a kind of a sad time.
Very.
And just, I mean, but yeah, and on top of that, I mean, there's obviously political struggle and, all these sorts of not uprisings, but like, yeah, I guess uprisings to some extent. But
more and more people just wanting their voice to be heard.
Yeah, there's definitely some, just something's boiling up, and it just so happened that we also had to deal with a pandemic last year, which sort of just like helped to, just keep, it just like made things even more tense.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody's sitting at home on Twitter or on their social medias, and just everything starts to bubble over then.
Yeah. Well, and so the story that I'd mentioned that was, sort of kind of about the pandemic was, I thought of, like the sort of anti-masker people. I'm not one of them. So I was like, what kind of goes through their minds? And I know that it sort of comes down to this idea of, they believe in their freedom. I don't really understand how that, equates to, health, but
I don't get it either.
But here's the thing, is that I thought, well, what if there was a sort of sort of like a. I like the idea of like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and so I sort of was going to do like my own sort of take on it, not in terms of like the like redoing that story, but in terms of sort of trying to boil down the base essence of a moment, and the anger and frustration of that moment, where the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is essentially about a family that has been left behind, by the 20th century, and they're, obviously eating people, but so I thought, what if there was like a carnival somewhere in either the South or maybe even in California somewhere, like somewhere in the Grapevine, one of these places that is sort of more sparse, and they are still going forward with their huge event. They're reopening, and they're and the whoever the people in charge are have to go in and be like, hey, you have to shut down, but they try to take those people and like get rid of them. And that was basically the idea, was that these carnival folk who are anti-maskers and are going to be having this like huge event and inviting people to come and like hoping people will come, they're going to try to kill these people to ensure that their event still happens. And that was like essentially my idea of like how do I sort of boil down the moment. I mean, obviously, like the sort of the thing with writing a story like that is that it has to, will it be as effective if it comes out in a year or whatever.
Right. Will you miss the moment, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think that it wouldn't, because we'd be able to look back on it and go, okay, that, and also I don't think that those sort of thoughts are going anywhere. I think that we're still dealing with all of those sorts of, just ideas of what freedom is, or, whatever. Yeah, so I would like to think that it would still be, effective when it hopefully will come out, or, but yeah, it's an interesting time, to say the least. It's a dark time, but yeah, I mean, has there been a better time for comics? Maybe, but this is a great time for comics, I will say that.
I mean, it really is. The stories coming out, I mean, my pull list is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, I can't go to the comic shop without leaving with like a stack like this. Just there's so many good books in it.
Oh, I know.
It's perfect. You're at home. You got time to read them and stuff like that,
Yeah, I mean, that might be like part of
these
the
all happen to be
nice.
Maybe I'm a little biased, but
happy to see him.
And you know what I really do enjoy about that Texas Blood is it is so different in the style of from everything else that's out there. Like vampires seem to be really big right now. There's a lot of really good vampire books. Philadelphia being one of them. Loving that book. But we haven't really had like that noir westerny feeling comic in a good while, and I think that Texas Blood really brings that to the table, and it was something that was a missing piece. It's fresh. It was something that maybe more recent comic readers haven't gotten a taste of in a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that really drew people to the comic also was, I think our pacing is a little different, and we take the time with our characters, and I think that the way that Jacob draws the characters also really lends a lot to the appeal of the comic and the characters, because it really you feel like you're sitting down across from them when there's a close up, but I think that's very Texas, is the pacing, the slowness of it, the deliberateness of it. We take our time with it, and I feel like that people have definitely responded to that in a positive way, and for that I'm eternally grateful. I mean, the fact that we have an Image book in the first place is amazing, but the fact that we have an Image book that people seem to like is even better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're able to continue that going forward. But yeah, it's going to be the same sort of thing with the next arc, the same sort of deliberateness in the characters and the, we really explore the characters in the county and sort of what happens when this darkness sort of lands in the county and like how they deal with it.
Right. I mean, already you're
so-
starting to see that like everyone's kind of got ties or run-ins to everyone. You know, when you get into these small towns like that, everyone knows everyone. There are no secrets. There's nothing that stays buried. Everything comes out. And I do appreciate the way that even characters that we've maybe only seen for a panel or two, you hint at that past relationship or like a past falling out, something that happened between these two characters that you can explore potentially down the road.
Yeah, exactly. I mean that's definitely. I mean, it's 100% deliberate. But yeah, it's also just it's real, because I mean that's. I'm very friendly with there's a family that I know from West Texas. They live in Fort Davis, which is right next to Marfa, which is where our fictional county is based off of. And it's the same sort of thing with them that, when I would go to visit in Texas, this story about this person, or, they run into it kind of boils down to this one sort of thing that the guy the father of my friend, his name is Joe Bob, which lent his name to Joe
That
Bob.
sounds familiar.
And he told me that I could borrow his pickup truck to go to Marfa, because he didn't want to go, and he said, "You could take my truck." He said, "Just make sure when you're driving, you got your hand on the wheel. Just make sure whenever you pass somebody, you just go like this."
Oh, yeah, the classic two-finger wave.
Give them the wave. If they don't, they're going to think I started getting real rude, Chris. And I said, "Okay, Joe Bob." But that's the thing is that, you got to be kind to everybody. And, that's sort of the thing with Texas.
Oh, absolutely.
Obviously, it there's a darkness to things as well. Which has also been something we were trying to show in the comic, but
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the darkness in the first arc really kind of like crept up on you, and then it jumped out. It's kind of this looming thing that you were like, all right, there's a backstory here. There is a dark history, and then all of a sudden it comes to a head, and it hits hard and it hits fast.
Yeah,
and I mean, casserole dish is found.
Yep.
Yeah. Just something to look forward to.
That paste stain in the end.
It's all about the casserole, really.
Yeah.
I want to say that the casserole is going to come back, but I don't want to ruin anything.
So do I remember correctly that you released like a That Texas Blood casserole recipe? Am I making that up, or do I remember that?
We have one. We haven't released it yet.
Oh boy.
I don't know how we're gonna release it.
Oh wait. Awesome.
We got to figure out how to do it. We were going to do it as one of the postcards for our Patreon, but it just doesn't fit on the postcard because I wrote it as like Martha telling you a recipe, right?
Right.
So it's like it runs long because she's like, right. And if you don't have the goddamn, whatever. So it runs a little long.
I love that.
But yeah, it's I want to publish it somewhere, so that's forthcoming. You can look forward to that. But,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I love how the casserole has kind of become like this thing that people really enjoy. That was the crux of that first issue. Once I came up with the idea of, okay, it's got to be the casserole dish. That's the through line.
Well, it kind of set a lot of the Joe Bob story in motion. It got him involved in this whole thing, and we kind of got to see what's going on behind the scenes beforehand.
Yeah, exactly. And just how the casserole dish sort of leads him to where this
now was that your intention to have the casserole dish be essentially like such a big plot device?
So
it's like its own character almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I said, when I thought of that for the short film, that was when it all kind of clicked for me, because I sort of had like the idea, but not really. And what I had initially was, like I said, I wanted to tell like a story that was adjacent to the feature film that we were working on, with a side character, and so I picked Joe Bob, and so I was working on that. And originally, it was just like a really short, like my short film thesis. It was really short. It was like 5 pages or something like that. So it would be like 5 minutes, and it was going to literally just be Joe Bob on the side of the road. Ray comes driving by. He pulls him over. Explosion of violence. Boom. That's our title. Like, like just like this, like lean, mean, just like get in, get out. Like no
Yeah,
explanation. Just like
absolutely.
this, like sort of just like a snippet of this world. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, there's not much of filming, and so I was like, let me explore it a little bit more. And so I, sort of thought about, okay, it's this guy's birthday, and then after that, just being like, like the classic, like MacGuffin, like what's the thing that he's looking for, but like make it like a unique Texas thing. So it's not like, he's chasing people like with his gun out or whatever, but
Right. He's
have
just
it be
trying
this
to return a
casserole.
casserole dish.
Yeah, he's trying to track down this casserole dish, and then so it just sort of, once I thought of the casserole dish, it all just sort of clicked for me, and it all just like was like, okay, so that's the film. It's about the casserole dish, really, and then eventually, obviously, the comic became like the casserole dish comic.
That's awesome. That's so funny to me that, like, some, ultimately just some inanimate object all became the linchpin of this entire story, kind of tied it all together for you. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the way that these things work, when you're writing them. Sometimes it's like you have like a really good idea for one thing, but you don't have the other bit of it. And sometimes, you have to wait like a week, and sometimes you have to wait a month, but eventually like clicks for you, and sometimes for me, I've sort of been like working on things, and I'll write one word, and it will be like, that's it. Got to go back and like rework the thing and like add in whatever I need to get it to be this. And that was what the casserole dish was for me, for that arc, or for that story, for that issue.
Was there any was there any like eureka moment for you with the casserole dish? Like, did you sit down for dinner and it was casserole and you're just like, of course.
Well,
this is perfect.
Well, here's the thing: is with that family, the Duncan family is their name.
Mm-hmm.
With the Duncan family, one of the highlights of every day that you're with them is dinner.
Oh yeah,
it's a big part of the day, because there's like they do cocktails before dinner, and then there's dinner. So it's like a lead up. You have like a whole like thing, but it's they talk about it in the morning. Like, what are we gonna do for dinner? Okay, we're going to be doing this. So it's that sort of was what lent the idea, I think, probably to the casserole dish, was what is the most Texas thing to me would be.
I mean, food gathering. Like the dinner is a very culturally important thing for a lot of Texans.
Oh, yeah.
You got the barbecue, you got the Southern hospitality, the sweet tea. I mean. Mm-hmm. Dinner and all that's a big Texas thing. So I mean, it really does fit on every level.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, like the most the best part for me about writing the comic is hearing from Texans that they like our comic and that they feel like it's very Texas.
How many people have assumed that you live in Texas?
Most.
Yeah.
Most.
I am one of the. I am definitely one of those most.
Yeah, that's honestly like the nicest compliment I can get.
Oh, absolutely.
And I love Texas. I mean, I might even like to live there at some point. I mean, I honestly do love Texas, and writing Texas in this comic is literally a love letter to the place. I mean, I love the vistas of it. I love the people, the accent's obviously great. And writing in the accent is fun. It's just. It's a unique place, and to be able to write it is really cool. And to write it in such a way that people think that it's authentic is, obviously better. It was really, amazing to get an email from a state trooper that he felt that we captured what his daily life was like in the
Yeah,
casserole
now
dish issue.
that's cool. That's cool.
That was really a cool
That's
thing
awesome.
to yeah. So I would just like forward those emails to Jacob and be like, look. But yeah, I mean, and honestly, like Jacob is like a huge part of that. And he's never been to Texas. He just
Well, like
grew,
Jacob's over in England even.
Yeah, I was gonna get
You know,
into that.
yeah.
And
so, like,
talk about Jacob and his Google Maps.
yeah, he street views things. I mean, I sent him a few things sort of to kind of like set the tone, maybe even when we were like in the concept art stage of like what I was looking for and what kind of place this is, you know, not that, you know, because it's, you know, Texas is a big place. So
oh yeah.
East Texas is very different
Right.
from West Texas. And so you have to keep that in mind when you're writing this, you know, so that it's a different place. There's a different style of, you know, living. I mean, you're definitely, I feel like Texans in general have a sort of like overall feeling about being Texan. But I feel like the pace and the setting, obviously, but you know, it all sort of changes depending on where you are in Texas, whether you're in the Panhandle or where you are.
I mean, the way that you write and draw, well, obviously Jacob does the drawing, but the way
If
that
I
the
drew
book,
it,
the way that the book is written and drawn, it leads one to believe. It feels
much
like you
real.
two are plopped down. You know, you're just both sitting side by side on a bench in a small town in Texas, and just basically documenting what's going on. You know, it really does have that authentic feel to it. So I give you guys a lot of credit for just absolutely nailing Texas.
yeah, I mean, here's the thing: is that I think that the people in Texas are so genuine,
Mm-hmm.
at least the ones that I've met,
Yep.
and that you really know who they
Right.
are when you meet them. And so, in writing these people, in terms of the characters that we write for the comic, I mean, that's really what I'm trying to show. And I mean, obviously, Jacob does such a great job for that as well. Is just being able to, you know, capture somebody that seems so real. And you know, I mean, I had an idea of what Joe Bob was when I was writing him way back when there was no image of what Joe Bob was going to be. And now I can't think of him any other way than this 70-year-old guy with a mustache.
I mean,
who has,
you ever see a person and you're like, yeah, that guy looks like his name. He
yeah.
looks like a Joe Bob. That is a Joe Bob.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's the thing is, I mean, if you look at the concept art, I mean, he doesn't have a mustache, and at that time he was 50. It was going to be his 50th birthday, not his 70th birthday. So I mean, a lot has changed from that point, and it's sort of like all those pieces sort of just clicking together. And I mean, obviously to readers, it's like that's just the way it was. But it's like, I mean, I love reading like the, you know, the gestation period stuff for like Star Wars or Batman the Animated Series or any of this stuff, because it's all like, how did the thing that you love come to be that you feel like is perfect, but it wasn't, you know, always that way. You know, so it's kind of fun to think about, you know, where we were at with this thing. You know, and just kind of look at it and be like, okay, yeah. I mean, it's like at a certain point, it was a very different thing. Overall, the story was there, but you know, certain aspects of it that are integral to it now were not there. And so it's kind of interesting to look at and be like, oh, cool. So this is how it became the thing.
I love getting that peek behind the curtain to see the creative process. It's very fascinating to me. You know, as someone who's not really very gifted as an artist or a writer, I love to see, you know, like, hey, you know, this is how it started. And by the time it became this thing that so many people love, you know, it went through so many changes and different tweaks and things that now you can't even imagine it being without.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's it's just such a unique thing. I mean, what if Star Wars wasn't, you know, what if, you know, Darth Vader wasn't, you know, wearing a helmet like he was wearing, you know, like what would that have been like? You know, what if the stormtroopers also had lightsabers? Like all these things that you see in the concept art, and or if you read the original script or whatever, that these things weren't there, and then now it's like, oh well, obviously that's the way.
Right.
That
Well,
we
now
have
it's
to go
just
with it.
a given. It's so
Right.
ingrained into us, and also something like Star Wars. That's ingrained into like people that don't know anything about Star Wars know about Star Wars. Let's put it that way. Like you can show people a picture of Darth Vader, they know who that is, even if they've never seen a movie somehow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah. My girlfriend has never seen Star Wars, and yet she loves Yoda.
So there you go. I mean, you see Baby Yoda or Grogu everywhere now, and it's like, like, do you watch The
40-year-old knows
Mandalorian?
who
It's like,
Grogu is. He's
yeah,
never
exactly.
seen
And it's like, you'll find people that are like, no, I just, it's a cute character, so I like it. And
Yeah.
it's just like, hey, that's how powerful that these
I saw him at
stories can be.
7-Eleven.
That's funny.
See the little Baby Yoda everywhere. Speaking of, I don't know if Jacob's still here. I'm not a super artist, but I got my an Apple Pencil for my iPad, so I have to show you guys this Joe Bob I did to show you. Jacob,
Please
sue me.
show us.
I don't know if you can see it.
Look at that. That Texas Blood fan art.
Show.
Yeah,
that's great.
Hey, that looks really good,
There's
man.
a bust of him from Jake's art is like almost impossible to replicate, though. His styling and the shit.
Yeah,
I did that for fun. I was like, I gotta show him on the.
I got.
It looks almost like so simple, but it's not.
That's the thing. I mean, I always look at Mike Mignola in terms of that, and because his stuff, it really looks simple. Like when you break it down, it just looks like shapes. Sort of shapes of blacks and colors.
Right.
But when you try to do it,
that's the thing. I think with Darwin Cook, it looked like simple animations, but so detailed.
Well, it's almost like it's almost like those people that they don't say much, but when they speak, they speak important. And it's kind of the same thing. There's not a lot of busyness going on. It's just very much like just powerful without being overly complicated. There's not lines going every which way. And I think it really fits well for the story. Look at that.
Jacob said you could take over, Wes.
Wes, looks like we're going to be having you as a guest artist.
No way. He probably does one of those in 20 minutes. That took me 2 days.
All right, yeah, and we're going to need 18 pages done in, 10 days. So if you can get on that, Wes.
Right. No, I'll leave it to the
18 years
pros,
later.
Man. I'll send it in. You can put it in the back page somewhere. Yeah, right. Arc 20.
A Joe Bob pinup. A Joe Bob pinup. There we go.
Oh yeah, no, I'd love to have like a Joe Bob pinup somewhere. That'd be great. It's like that we have that one the shirt with the. By the way, join our Patreon. Buy a baseball tee. They're fantastic.
Oh, very nice.
But we have that with a well shirt with Joe Bob looking down the well.
Nice.
And I feel like that would be like a great pinup, or just like sort of things like that, where it's
Oh, that would be
really.
There's a page in issue 7 of our comic where Joe Bob is like just scratching his head a lot, and I feel like that's very integral to his character, and I feel like
I love how like just seasoned and over all the nonsense that he is. He's just always like, I can't believe I'm dealing with this still at my age.
Well, here's the thing about him is that I feel like he never thought that he would be dealing with this stuff, which I think is what it makes him such an interesting. Yeah, there you go. Yep, that's the one. But yeah, I just feel like he never thought that he would be dealing with all this stuff, and now he is. And people look up to him to be the one dealing with it, and that sort of has its own weight. And so it's really fun to kind of write that character and be like, how does he deal with it all, or how does he not deal with it, or you know?
I really do think you mentioned that originally you had him more in his 50s and you bumped him up to being in his 70s. I think that really adds to that too, that he's been doing this, probably 50 years. He probably joined, the force when he was in his 20s. So he's been dealing with Texas shenanigans for 50 years now. He's seen what he thought to be it all.
Yeah, Wes variant cover.
Right.
That'll be a incentive cover.
It'll be a 1 in 400. I think Donnie Cates did a cover for one of the King and Blacks, and it was like a 1 in 500. So maybe we can get you on that track.
Yeah, I saw that Donnie Cates cover. Yeah, I think Image you have to buy like 500 variant or something. They got some crazy setup. It'll be an exclusive, and I'll own every copy.
Yeah, I mean, I really like our variants for this new arc too.
I mean, the covers for even the second print covers have just all been gorgeous. Wes and I were talking. Issue 4, issue 5; those are two of my favorites, probably. But I really love the second print covers where it's just the original cover just in the shape of Texas. I really have been enjoying the covers.
They're really smart. Yeah, Jacob really killed them. But yeah, I honestly I wish we could show you all of the covers that we have for the next arc.
Well, because we've seen 7 and 8, correct?
You've seen 7 and 8, yeah.
Okay.
9 and 10, 10 especially are just phenomenal.
Nice.
What was that?
Number 1, you've got 4 covers with number 1. I've only got the B cover. It's your first print. That's the Sean covers, right?
Yeah.
And then you got the second print.
Yep.
And then the third print.
Yeah, I like the yellow cover too. The second print.
I like the yellow cover too. But going back, you put that Texas Blood number out. What was that like? Getting the Image like, oh, we got to rush it back to second print.
And then this is a surprise. I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting our numbers on the first issue in the first place. So here's the thing that you got to remember is that the pandemic really kind of hit its zenith. Well, zenith, not exactly, but it hit its. It really got going, right? When we were about to be released. So May of 2020, lockdown was instituted at the end of March. April, there was just sort of confusion. Nobody really knew what was going on. And then Image, obviously Diamond.
Yeah, the Diamond
stopped distributing. And then we were supposed to be in May, and we weren't going to be in May anymore. And, there were emails from the publisher that, we don't know what's going on, but, we're going to make it through this. And so Jacob and I were talking about, that's where we came up with the Brutal Dark was, that was an idea that I've had for years. And I sort of emailed him and was like, hey, I don't know when we're going to be able to do that Texas Blood, when it's going to come out. We already have the issue done, but when is it going to come out? I don't know. So I said, you want to, we kind of have a momentum building at this point. Do you want to release, a separate thing, make like a Patreon, and we could do like a digital comic? And he said, yeah, he was down. And, he's very much like into that sort of, Indiana Jones adjacent like noirish adventure thing. So that was where Brutal Dark came from. But at that point we really didn't know if we were gonna come back. Jacob had heard rumblings that we were not gonna be on the schedule until like late December of 2020, maybe 2021. So we had we were gonna come out. And then when they sent us our new date, it was June. So it was like the first couple books that were coming out. And so, I was obviously very excited to see ourselves in print, but, you never knew how that was going to translate. Would people go to shops? Would they buy the issues? Like, how would it work out? Because people weren't really leaving their houses.
Right. Yeah, it's a difficult time for a first issue to come out, with so much uncertainty going around. Yeah. I hadn't even thought of that. I guess, I totally forgot when the first issue came out, but yeah, that was when everything kind of came to a standstill in the comic book world.
It was it was a little scary. I mean, I remember having conversations with my comic shop and being like, "Hey, are you going to be able to survive?" And he essentially said that if worst comes to worst, like comics are not being distributed for a very long time, he was like, I could probably make it with just collectibles, but he was like, I don't know. So it was like a scary time because it's like, where are you if your comic shops aren't there? That's where you sell issues. That's where you make your money from. So it's like it's a scary time. Sort of just being in limbo. Luckily, obviously, things haven't really worked out in the negative. I mean, obviously, I think the comic industry is doing pretty well right now.
Weirdly enough, I would even go as far as to say as like comics kind of boomed in the last year.
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
Oh,
I
easily.
Being at home may have played a big part in it. I know that there is a lot of interest from Hollywood in comics. I mean, you see that in just terms of like the adaptations that are coming out or being announced like constantly. And then you also have things like Berserker, which are literally made as essentially like a pitch for a movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, plus movie theaters are closed, and so where are people going to get their entertainment from? Either the TV or from comics.
I mean, when I worked at a shop, and when we first closed down, we had so much business of people just being like, how can I keep you guys in business? I mean, we practically emptied our bookshelves of all of our trades. People were just like, you know what? There's nothing new coming out. Now is the perfect time for me to catch up on all these stories I haven't read over the years.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people, again, were just looking for a way to entertain themselves at home. And I mean, our curbside for the first month or two when there were no comics coming out, I mean, we had two of our best months as a shop just purely based on people buying out all of our trades and, graphic novels and stuff. People that didn't want to see the shop die. And really that's who we have to thank. It's like we had people call and say, how can, what can I buy to help keep you in business? Like, you are my local comic shop. What can I do to help you? And, it's really huge for us. And, I know there's a lot of shops that, weren't so lucky. So we really counted our blessings there. But, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing about comic book readers and comic book fans is just they're really loyal and it's an amazing thing to see, and it's just, I don't know. It's like they're there for you, and I think that part of it is because the medium is so personal. Like I said, it's that 1-to-1 relationship. I was having a conversation with Rich Dueck, who writes Sea of Sorrows and Road of Bones.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about, we were talking about that sort of relationship, and I mean, I don't know if there's any more personal medium out there. I mean, obviously novels, but just in terms of you have to interact with the book, otherwise you're not going to read it. But you have to really interact with it because it's not just words. It's pictures, so you have to digest the words and the pictures, and so you really have to engage with it, and so it's a really interesting medium. And I think that in that you sort of birth this loyalty in people because they've invested a lot of time and money and months, and it's. I mean, I feel that way about certain comics. I mean, I'm always excited when I see a comic that I love being adapted into TV or movie. And obviously, I hope it's going to be great, but I'm just happy for the creator in general and that they're going to be able to make a little money off of this.
Yeah. I mean, just seeing the trailer for the new Sweet Tooth series, I'm just like, you know what? Good for you, Jeff. That's got to be an amazing feeling. Especially when you got someone like Robert Downey Jr. coming in and being like, I want to make this project. I love this project. That's just got to be I don't even know how to describe something like that, Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, he's an amazing creator of content. I mean, if you just look at his output, it's insane.
Yeah.
the amount of books that he has out and the amount of universes that he has created.
And like the consistency too, like there's never anything that he puts out that you're just like, like he just wanted to put this out to put everything that he puts out has purpose behind it. And I really appreciate that, and that's another thing, speaking towards, how passionate the comic fan base can be. I've never experienced, a medium where you can interact so easily with the creators of your favorite books. I mean, you can hop on and comment on a Scott Snyder post, and he comments back to you. You're talking to Scott Snyder. He's writer of one of your favorite Batman stories. So that's something that I've really, really loved about the comic industry, is just the fact that, like, even right now we can sit down and just talk. That's really cool to me.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, I'm speaking for myself, obviously, but I think that it sort of goes for everybody in the industry, is that it's one of the joys of writing comics is that we're able to talk with you guys about it. And to be able to, just sort of share in that, the love of the medium, the love of comics. I mean, we're all from the, we all cut from the same cloth, really. I mean,
right.
We all just we love what we do, and we all do it for the love of comics, and I mean, I know that my story might have had its origin in a different medium, but I mean, I can't imagine it as anything else at this point.
Right.
I almost kind of wish that I thought of doing this comic book in the first place, just because I'm really happy that we're doing it as a comic book. I'm really happy with it. And I'm so lucky to have Jacob doing the artwork on it, and just every time I get sent something, I'm just like, this is perfect. I mean, I can't imagine it any other way. I'm just incredibly lucky to be able to have the book that I have, and to be able, to be able to do this sort of like, 70s TV movie spin thing that I'm talking about, but just like, I just wanted to do it, and I'm able to do it. And like, the fact that you guys want to, read it is even more amazing.
Yeah, because I mean, you could put it out, and you could love it, but like, to get that reciprocating, like, oh wow, you mean others are like really invested in the story like I am, like, it's got to be a really nice feeling.
Oh yeah, no, it's amazing. I mean, I feel like Scott Snyder is sort of in the same wavelength, where he sort of just has his own weird, like, sort of niche, but like, he's found so many people who love that niche. Like, not as like this sort of Big Trouble in Little China meets Mad Max meets whatever. It's just like this sort of weird mashup of horror and
Well, I remember how blown away I was just by the timing of Undiscovered Country coming out with everything going on in the world. And it's like, America closes all of its borders, and no one's heard from America in 20 years. And I was just like, well, dang, Scott, like, good timing on that, man.
Yeah,
good timing.
Yeah, I really like that book. That was a book that I kind of saved every issue until I could read them all in one.
Yeah.
It's a really dense comic, and so I really liked sort of exploring it all at once versus the individual issues every month. Which, that's another thing that's great about comics, is that you have that choice, of whether you want to read it all at once or whether you want to read them individually. I hope that it continues to stay, as floppies.
I'm a big advocate for the physical comics. I think that digital comics are great. In my opinion, the more hands that you can get a comic into, however it may be, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that there's a time and place for digital comics.
Yeah,
for sure. No question about it. But I mean, even Comixology is, they're pairing with Dark Horse to publish their stuff, in print. So it's, even they want to get their stuff in print.
Right.
Right. So it's, I think that there's just something about having art in a physical medium in which you can see it and interact with it. I mean, I think that it's always going to be better than a screen. I don't know why, but I have this weird thing where when I read something digitally versus reading it physically, like I remember it better when I read it physically for some reason. I don't know why. Like I sort of have more of a full experience with it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know why that is exactly, but it's the way that it is.
Maybe with the
for me.
smell. I heard a lot of people recognize they remember reading with the smell of the paper. I always thought that was crazy, but it's I've always seen it to be true. It's the smell and the touch and the looking at it. It's way different than holding an iPad.
I just rebought. I don't know if I have it already. I might have it, but it was in a dollar bin. But I got like the Raiders adaptation, and like I got a bunch of old comics, like the Kirby superpowers and stuff. But like I sort of have been going back to getting older back issues just because I missed the look and the smell of them, and you know.
You really notice how much that the ink, like the inks that are used, the paper that's used, that's changed a lot over the years. And sometimes you don't really notice it until you pick up an older book and you're just like, wow, like I totally forgot that a comic was so much different. Or, every once in a while you'll get one that's got the hole punches in it. And you're like, what's all that about? And you look into it and you're like, oh, wow. So you're telling me that the way to store comics used to be that you'd hole punch it, throw it in a 2-ring binder. Like, nowadays it's like you pristinely bag, you pristinely board, you sort them in your boxes. And back then it was just punch some holes in it, throw it in a binder,
Yeah.
Right.
And by the way, it looks like we have somebody else who agrees with me about my not grasping digital.
Yeah, one of the burrito boys.
But yeah, I
definitely
always
not
think it's
Todd. It's got to be Nick or Cole.
Whoever it is, I agree. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it's so funny to me to like think about those like people who read, Detective 27 or Batman #1 or Action. It's like all these people who just sort of like either just traded away the issue or just like shoved it in their back pocket or in the bottom of their trunk or whatever.
Well, one of the interesting things with Action 1 specifically is on the back of the cover they had a cut this out, mail it in with a quarter, and we'll send you a T-shirt. And back then a T-shirt was a lot more valuable than some silly funny book. It was like, but could you imagine having done that? And like years and years later being like, dang, I sent that cover in for a T-shirt. But like, how would you have known? You wouldn't have.
I mean, even in issues from like the 70s, they have cutout ads and stuff like that.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Sometimes with a lot of Silver Age books, sometimes the ads are the most fun part for me. You get a lot of the Daisy BB guns or Sea Monkeys, and those are always fun for me.
Sea Monkeys.
Yeah. The classic, the weightlifter guy.
Yes,
do you want to be this man?
I always find that funny because nowadays it's like everything's all about like losing weight loss pills, and back then it was like gain 20 pounds in 5 days, and that was the big thing, is like bulking up.
The X-ray glasses are another one.
Yeah, exactly. Love it.
Gain 20 pounds in 3 days. Eat these rotisserie chickens.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's the great thing about the medium as well, though. It's just that you're able to go to a comic book shop and either you can just go through dollar bins, or sometimes if they still have them, quarter bins or 50-cent bins, or or if they have CGC graded copies, they have them on the wall for a lot more money. But
comic book collecting is one of those things where there's multiple different subsidies of collecting. You can be, someone that only collects full runs of X-Men, someone who collects, only a certain artist or a certain author. I mean, there's so many different subsidies of collecting. There's some people that are like, I will never slab a book ever. And then there's others that are like, all I do is slab books. So I think that also lends itself to being it's such a flexible medium. You know, there's a lot of people who love comics who may not have read a new comic in 20 years. They just like the older stuff, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's also funny to me that there's sort of there's also a faction of people that feel like superhero comics and stuff like like Black Hole or anything like that, or like they're very different sort of comics, and I'm like, no, they're all part of the same medium. They're just like different factions of it. I think that they're both viable. I don't see why one outdoes
branches on
the
the
other.
same tree.
Yeah, but yeah, it's such an interesting medium. I absolutely love it. I discovered it on my own. I didn't have parents that were into comic books or anything, so I sort of found it on my own. It probably was just like growing up in the 90s when you had all like the animated shows.
That's
X-Men,
exactly what it was for me. I was done with school. I was like, you know what? All I do is work. I need something to do for me. I remembered that I loved Batman the Animated Series as a kid, so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna walk into a comic shop, and the rest is history. I didn't like you said, I didn't have anyone that was into comics. I didn't pick up my first comic book until I was 24 years old. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I was a late comic bloomer. I was always
That's
a fan
an amazing
of like
thing, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken off for me. I'll be 29 this year. I sometimes forget that I've only been reading comics for 5 years because it's something I'm so passionate about. But I was definitely way late to the game. But again, like you said, I didn't have an older brother or a cousin or a parent that was like, hey, you should check out this comic book. For me, it was just, hey, I used to like Batman the Animated Series. I'm going to Google comic shops near me because I need a hobby because all I do is work.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, I mean, I used to go to, there's a place in my hometown, Metuchen. It was called Tommy's Cards. It was the name of it, but he also had comic books. And I mean, this was way back when like Hush was coming out. I remember specifically there was that one issue with Poison Ivy with Batman strung up. I remember when that came out, but I was getting a lot of. I basically was getting Batman and
Batman 609, 610.
Yeah, exactly.
In that area.
Was 614 the one?
Who was writing Daredevil back then?
I want my comic cred approved right now. Was 614 the one with the Joker on it?
Yeah, Hush starts at 608, and that's the one with Batman with the boot.
Okay, I'm gonna say 614 is the one with the Joker because that was a favorite.
Yeah, 614's got to be Joker.
Because that's an amazing
609's got Batman with Poison Ivy.
Batman 614 right there. Certified.
That's it.
Also, I also find it funny.
I'm a comics fan.
Look at that. We got Punchline on there.
Nailed it.
Kind of interesting there.
Yeah. Full circle. That issue is amazing.
Man. Good memory.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just that's comic. Reading thing is that you just become like obsessed with it in some aspects. I mean, I did pour over that issue especially a lot. I loved the artwork. I loved that it floated between it floated between being watercolor and it like the regular Jim Lee digitally colored art.
Jim Lee, that's a difficult style to play off of, and it works. They did it.
Well, I mean, he's a fantastic watercolorist. Who would have thunk? I mean, I wouldn't know. Unless if he had dabbled with it before, I don't know. But I mean, it really just lends itself to the whole like flashback stuff, which is really what that issue is about. Is about all the tension and stress that the Joker is giving Batman, and Batman's like, why don't I just kill him?
Right.
Which is a constant, struggle for Batman.
Here we are so many years later, and it's still the burning question.
Yeah, I guess
But
you just, it's just, he's
that
got a code.
goes back to my point about drawing or writing these characters that have been around 80 years. I mean, you what do you do after you kill the Joker? I mean, yeah, Batman has a lot of other really, really great, characters in his mythos, but I mean, the Joker's been around almost as long.
Yeah, I mean 1940.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean you got
Batman #1.
literally, yeah. So I mean that's it's a really long history, but I think that's what makes it really intriguing that he hasn't killed him yet. Is why has he kept him alive? Why has he? And it's because of his code.
Right.
Which I think it makes Batman a really interesting character. I think that Superman is a very different character, but I think that his long histories with for example, Lex Luthor and all of the characters that populate his rogues gallery. I think that they're all really interesting, and Brainiac especially. Yeah, I mean I love this stuff. So
it's so fun.
I could go on
so
forever about all the different heroes and their villains.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, me too.
One of the great things for Spider-Man though was with Green Goblin impaling himself on his.
That is very true. It's one of those iconic Spider-Man stories.
Yeah, and and you can't really imagine that happening with Batman and the Joker, which is really, that's a unique thing that Marvel has, was that they're able to sort of do that more realistic, approach to things.
Well, I mean, I think
always
that
kind
even
of
boils down to the fact that Marvel will use cities like Spider-Man's in New York. New York's a real place. There's not a Gotham you can go to.
Queens.
You're not going to Coast City or Metropolis.
Yeah, I mean, and the idea is that they're sort of stand-in places where it's
right.
Keystone is sort of supposed to be in the
like
Midwest
Kansas
somewhere.
City, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that's cool, but it is definitely an interesting thing about Marvel Comics that they're in an actual city, New York City. I mean, I know when I was growing up that when we would go into the city, I would sort of look up and into between the buildings, be like, oh, can you imagine?
Look at that.
Where's Spidey at?
Team for physical books continues to grow.
Physical books. I mean, I just collect books in general too, so I'm just all about physical. And I still buy Blu-rays on occasion, so I'm all about physical media.
There's something about so you get this digital library, right? I remember recently Amazon had this thing where if you buy something from them digitally, you didn't legally own that thing. So it's like no one is coming into my house and taking this physical comic book from me. But what's gonna happen? What if I lose my password? Or I get locked out of my account? Do I lose every digital item that I
man, I had that happen. You remember Ultraviolet?
Yeah.
Ultraviolet was the thing before they switched to whatever they use now. I got locked out and then the platform, so I lost my whole digital. I was so pissed.
Yeah.
I mean, because I guess you had to go in and merge your Ultraviolet account with the new. I lost everything.
Well, that's what I mean. Say I lose my Kindle, are all those digital comics just gone? I mean, it'd be a lot harder for me to lose a box of comics.
Yeah, I mean, there could be flood damage or a fire or something like that. But
that's
overall,
true. God forbid.
But I mean, on some level, even if they are damaged, but they're still readable, and they're still at least in an okay shape. They're not just burnt to a crisp. They're literally just ashes. I mean, at some point you could still hold on to them and sort of have them as this sort of thing, that meant a lot to you. And I think that that's where the physical medium is, really why it's so important to us, is that you have a relationship with it, on whatever level.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, for me, some of my more valuable comics to me are the most invaluable monetarily. It'll be my mom was at a thrift store and saw this comic and was like, hey, I thought of you when I saw this, so I got it for you. And to me, that physical comic is one of the more valuable comics I have, because it's like, hey, I remember when my mom grabbed this for me, or this was the first comic I ever read,
Right, yeah.
stuff like that. So it does speak a lot more, I think, to that nostalgia.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and for sure, comics are sort of born out of that sort of nostalgia thing. In modern collecting terms, but yeah, I don't know. There's just, I don't know. I love having the actual thing in my hands. It makes the experience for me. I mean, I also just like
very like, I enjoy the process of like bagging and boarding and like then putting the sorting in a box. For me, it's very almost almost therapeutic in a way. It's a very calming thing I can do. It's very nice for me. Uh-oh.
Watch out.
That's Cole, too. I actually was able to meet up with him a couple weeks back. That was nice. What's up, Cole?
But, yeah, I mean...
now he knows where you live.
I also feel like comics look different digitally. They you get a different... Especially with older comics. Like, if you look at, like... Even with reprints or something like that, but you look at them digitally, and then you look at the actual issue, and the colors look different, the lines look different. You know, they look different when they're printed. So I feel like you're definitely getting a different experience when you're. And also sometimes like the colors are just off, but sometimes it looks cool. So you're just like, oh man, like the happenstance of having something weird happen in the comic is sort of like, oh, I kind of have this weird variant for myself. It might not be worth money, but it's.
Last time about how the Hulk used to be gray versus green just because they couldn't afford green ink back then. Everybody thinks it's some big thing, but it's just the cost of ink. So he was gray versus green.
But I also like the fact that they retroactively wrote that to have a purpose in the comics. Like Gray Hulk, that's Professor Hulk. That's the intelligent, more well-spoken Hulk. So I do love that they took this real-world reason, which was, a little more economical, and they wrote it into the mythos of the Hulk as just being like, oh, well, that's a different version of the Hulk. I love that they did that.
Yeah. I'm a big Hulk fan, so you're preaching to the choir here. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of the Immortal Hulk right now. I don't know if you guys are...
One of the best comics on stands right now.
I completely agree.
Not a big Marvel guy, but Alex is killing it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and so yeah, the new Alex Packnadel issues which are coming out they look fantastic. I'm really excited. I got like a little sneak peek at it, and I'm really excited. Time of Monsters.
Yeah, I got probably the same sneak peek, man. Oh yeah, it looks awesome.
Yeah. It's going to be weird.
I'm also a big fan of Alex's work. Everything he's done is just right.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I had a very long time. I mean, you listened to the podcast I did with him on the Patreon. But
yep.
Red Fork, I feel like was such a perfect comic book in my mind because it is about real world stuff, but he also does this unique folkloric horror spin on, and it becomes like so perfectly of this medium. And obviously, they may adapt it at some point into movies or TV, but that's they get all their ideas from comics.
It does seem that way lately. Mm-hmm. Comics are the farm for a lot of visual mediums now, and it's really cool to see that comics are no longer the almost taboo, like you're an adult, what are you doing reading comic books? It's much more widely accepted to be a comic book reader, and I think it's cool that Marvel has done so much in the last 10 years with their movies, and it's brought so many new people into comic books, and it's really revitalized the industry.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. I mean, there's an interesting relationship between film and TV and comic books, especially now. But I think that right now, currently, it's more so probably that it's just a proven quantity, and I think that might be a part of it.
Absolutely.
Which, I mean, in terms of if you're trying to get like an original film off the ground, it kind of sucks, that you're not able to get your thing off the ground because you're just
That's very true.
Going off the script. But in terms of adapting comic books, it just goes to prove that comic books are an amazing medium with amazing ideas. I mean, it really is, and it's also it's so interesting to kind of see people who take things outside of the box. I mean, in terms of just like art and things you can't do in movies or TV, or if you did do them in movies and TV, it'd be like, it would be very strange to see. But like, for example, the Trad Moore Silver Surfer that came out last year. I think that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love Mike Allred stuff. Like all these sorts of weird, like psychedelic things you just don't normally see. I'm trying to. There was something I read recently that was really cool. Wish I could remember what it was. I swear it was good.
Invisible Kingdom.
It
was
so
not
good that I
Invisible
can't
Kingdom,
remember
but-
what it was.
No, I swear I read a lot of comics, so that's like the thing. Is just that it's sort of I read a lot.
Yeah, I know they all
I
blend.
can see it. It's a 2-page thing, and you have to turn it sideways to see it. And I just can't remember what the title was. I'm literally want to go back in my box and like, take a look at what it was. But anyway, we can move on from there before I, stumble over myself.
Well, it almost reminds you of something Greg Capullo did early in the Court of Owls Batman run, where you physically have to turn your book sideways, upside down, sideways again to follow
the upside down page.
Yeah, when he's going through the Court of Owls maze, and Greg draws it in a way that you have to like, you're losing your mind with Batman. Like you follow the art by turning the book physically. So I like. Things like that, I do think when it comes to doing really comic booky things and getting them to work, Into the Spider-Verse did that really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
That was the most comic book movie I think I've ever seen.
It might be one of the best comic book movies out there, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, yeah, I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I don't normally go see comic book adaptations more than once in the theater, but I saw that one a couple times in theaters.
Oh yeah.
I really like that one a lot. Yeah, I don't know, and just even the animation style is unique. It had that sort of like 4-color thing. Yeah, just it looked like a printed comic, which is really cool. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that was a great movie. I keep seeing. I mean, I always walk by like the toy aisles when I'm like in the Target or whatever, and I always see they have like the Into the Spider-Verse toys now, and I'm like tempted, but I don't really buy toys too often anymore.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I'll remember at 3 a.m. That's how this happened. Jacob says the same thing. It's always like I ask him a question like on a podcast or something like that, and he's just like, come up with 3 movies, and he can't come up with them. And then like as soon as we're off, he's like,
It's when you think too hard. It's like when you're not thinking about it, you can name 8 movies, but when you're put on the spot, you're like, 3 movies.
It's like being put on the spot. Yep.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I wish I could remember what it was. God damn it. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Damn.
The artist that really always stands out to me for being super psychedelic, kind of almost channeling like a lot of Kirby too, is Christopher Ward. That's why I brought up Invisible Kingdom. He did a run on Inhumans a while back. His art to me, I think he's also a watercolorist. But Christopher Ward always seems to blow me away with his work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really love the stuff he does.
Yeah, I mean, one of the issues that I really liked recently was both of the new Tom Taylor Nightwing issues. I
Yeah.
really like those, and those kind of do that sort of.
Oh, those are
They do
fantastic.
some very comic booky things in it. Like there's specifically a couple. There's like a one tier panel thing with him shooting.
Talk about where
Right.
Nightwing
I
jumping
love
down
that I love that they've kind of brought back the
And that too, yeah.
multiple different Nightwings in one, panel to show his movement to where he is
Yeah.
now. I love that. I think that's great, and it doesn't happen enough in comics anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like the wonderful thing about comics is
What
that
was it?
you're
One of
able
my
to do that on a
favorite
page.
instances of that. Batman Universe. I couldn't think of it. Nick Darrington did
Nick Darrington, yeah.
spread.
Nick Darrington is amazing.
Scheme.
Well,
Yeah.
Nick Darrington
Batman and Nightwing
is
going
like a
through
lot
the
like
submarine.
Darwin Cook.
Oh yeah, Darwin Cook is a favorite of mine.
Yeah,
I
Nick
have,
Darrington, Darwin Cook, those are two of my favorite artists.
Yeah, I mean, I'm never too far from my copy of New Frontier or Parker. But yeah, I mean, I also have Batman Universe over on my shelf over here.
I think I know which which page you're talking about, Wes, where it's Batman and Nightwing
it's a spread,
working
and
through
Batman
a bunch of
and
corridors.
Nightwing goes through the ventilations, and Batman's just going through kicking people's asses, and Nightwing pops out of it. It's so cool. It's one of my favorite spreads ever.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Comics. I mean, you could try to do it in a movie, but it wouldn't be the same.
Do you
And
see the little bit of shade
hard to do.
Do you see the little bit of shade that Jacob's throwing at you, Chris?
No, what did he say?
Oh, he's just telling you now. You know how it feels to, not be able to think of what you're thinking of, and then he adds in, "Oh, this is live too. How embarrassing!" Look at that, man. Unreal.
Oh,
that's funny. I love to see that.
I feel shame.
As soon as we end this, you're gonna message one of us and be like, "Yep, here it was. I remembered it right away."
I absolutely am. I'm like, honestly, Ian, I'm either gonna think of it immediately, or I'm gonna go back to my back issues and find it and be like, oh. But
that's funny.
The comments are like, "This is what Chris was talking about."
For sure.
Well, fellas, that was a good chat. I've really enjoyed this. This is a good time.
Oh yeah, it was fun. We got into a little bit of everything. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's pretty solid run. Let me see what the peoples are saying. It's hard. Sorry, you got to keep saying the top of my head.
That's all right, Wes.
It could very well have been an Image book. I think it probably was.
I'm willing to bet that once you think of it, it's going to be a book that a lot of us are like, "Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about."
Yeah,
but again, like going back to what you said about like you reading so many comics, I feel that on a very deep level.
Oh. Is he digging for it?
He went digging for it. I love it.
Wait, I'm in suspense.
What do you got in your read pile right now, Wes? We find it?
Well, no, I mean, I there was just a bunch of stuff that I found. I mean, The Good Asian I read, and that was great. And there's just a lot of really good stuff. Honestly, there were so many that I was like, oh, it's not just one.
Have you been reading Ultra Mega at all?
I have it right here. I literally have it right here.
Nice, love it. That one, issue one of that really blew me away with a lot of the splash pages in issue 1 really blew me away.
I mean, no shade to Marvel with their Ultraman comic, but I'm like, why aren't you just reading Ultra Mega?
Yeah,
it's that is like the sort of kaiju book that you want, because it's James Herron. How can you get better than that?
Right.
Chase actually brings up a really good issue too that was really impressive to me. It was haha number 3, I believe, where it follows the mime and it's a completely textless, you're just being led by the art. And that was a really impressive book to me too. So yeah, definitely was a big fan of that too. Chase.
That was a really good issue. I like that one a lot. And also, I kind of had like a bittersweetness to it.
I think that's kind of all of them, though. I think that's really what he's going for.
Yeah, all they kind of like come around. They're just sad
that
and
first
depressing.
issue was.
Oh my god! What?
That first issue is a shot in the head, you might say.
Nice. That's funny.
It was deep, man.
Yeah, right. I wasn't sure how I'd feel about that series, but I do really like it just because it's about clowns, and I'm like, how many clowns can I take? But I do like it a lot.
For sure. And then Cole brings up, if you guys remember the one-shot Hedra. I think that was a couple months ago at this point, but anyone out there listening, if you haven't read that, given that a chance, definitely
that was
do that.
Silent.
Yeah, and to me that's very impressive. To lead a story and like follow what's going on just visually.
Yeah, and the paneling is really impressive and smart.
So good, so good.
Yeah. Which is honestly something I look towards when I'm writing. I try to lead from those sorts of things. I don't think I, write things as well as that, and Jacob luckily is there to save me. But I definitely look at comics constantly, not just because I enjoy reading them, but also I'm trying to find inspiration in the way.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I really love about the comic industry is that there's very much creators supporting creators. Everywhere you look, it's creators supporting creators. Looks like we lost Wes.
Oh no,
that's all right. That fits. We lost me last time, so
Oh really?
Yeah, we're all just taking a turn. But I really love that about the comic industry. It's you'll have everyone putting everyone else's book out there. You're like, hey, check out so and so's book, and you are technically competing with these other creators, but I don't know many creators that actually think of it that way. It's very much like a brotherhood where you all like support each other.
Well, I'm new to this, so I'm lucky to be a little bit in the community. I hope someday we're able to have conventions again, or it seems like we will be having them soon. But it's just to actually meet people and talk with them. But here's the thing: is that if one of us succeeds, all of us succeed in the end, because if comics become bigger, that's good for all of us.
Right. Well, that's what I always tell people who are like, oh, Marvel, or Team Marvel or Team DC. And it's like, listen, if Marvel's not doing well, that's not good for DC, or vice versa. If DC's not doing well, that's not good for Marvel. Comics live and die together.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I mean that's sort of the thing, is that it's everything is just, it's this balance, this like natural balance. Everything has to remain perfectly balanced, otherwise it all just tips in one way or the other.
Absolutely. Oh, there we go.
He's back.
Welcome back.
Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. I was telling Chris that I got disconnected last time, so we're all just taking turns.
And I'm next, so
yeah, there we go.
Trying to get the headphones to kick in. I was using wireless earbuds and they died, and then for some reason that disconnected me from the stream.
Oh, interesting. Well, I guess that's good to know.
Yeah, I'm using wireless earbuds too, and I luckily haven't had that problem. I was recording a podcast with Julio Anta, and that same exact thing happened with him. His earbuds died, and he got disconnected at one point. So it's not just you, Wes.
Yeah, don't feel bad, buddy.
Oh, that's good to know. Trying to get rid of the echo.
So, Chris, you're
Always
working
fun.
on the second arc of That Texas Blood. There any other projects you're working on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working on a whole bunch of stuff, but nothing's been,
Right.
landed anywhere. I talked briefly about this in my newsletter on the Patreon, but there's a story I'm working on. It's called Quaint. It's like a crime idea. That one's flowing pretty well, and so I'm just kind of sticking with it. I find that that's something I do is that, if something's working, just go with it. It's sort of Parkerish in some ways, but also not in other ways. Take place in like the early 70s. It's sort of like a crime thing that happens in Colorado, in a ski resort town that has been abandoned in Colorado.
Okay.
But that's
I'm personally a big like crime mystery fan, so I'll be there for that one.
Cool. I mean, yeah, I hope that it lands somewhere. I'm still writing it currently. I haven't even pitched it to an artist. I have an artist in mind, but I haven't even pitched it to them because I want to get it right before I send it to them.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, I mean, yeah,
Fun.
Just working on stuff. And then right now at this point, it's just, we're going to be coming out with 7 through 13. So it's going to be 7 through 12 is the Eversalt arc. And then we're going to have another one shot, kind of like how issue 1 was a one shot.
Yeah.
So we're going to be coming out with those. And then, that's pretty much what I'm focused on at the moment, and then just working on other stuff, trying to figure out where to land it, where to pitch it and all that. And,
yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully, have some more stuff to my name soon. We'll see, and then hopefully we'll come back with Brutal Dark at some point once we're able to find the time for that.
Very cool. That's all really exciting, man.
I'm on a hook. I've been waiting. I'm ready.
Me too. I mean, it would be really cool to continue where we were going. I feel like it would be really cool. I don't know if it would be. That's the thing that I'm like contemplating. Would it be individual issues or would it just be a graphic novel? I don't know. But whatever it is, we're working on.
Have you given any thought? The Kickstarter stuff is real big right now too. Has that ever crossed your mind? Like that? Yeah,
I'm a little scared.
Yeah, it's an intimidating thing. You basically put yourself out there and just say, if this happens, this happens.
Yeah, I mean, also I feel like it might be the way to go, just because you have to pay people, and I don't make enough money to be able to pay people out of my own pocket,
Right.
So it's yeah, I mean, that might be the way to go. So you might be seeing me on Kickstarter. Yeah, I know that I back Kickstarters all the time, not just because, I mean, it is because the stuff just looks great overall, but I mean, it's also just like, I want to support people. Just because, obviously people support me. I want to give that back,
Yeah.
I mean, that's also why I'm in the comic shop every Wednesday. I can't say that's why I was, 2 years ago, but every Wednesday, you'll see me in the shop, I'm going over the.
Anyone ever? Have you had any like fan moments yet where someone's like, "Hey, you're Chris Condon," you write That Texas Blood?
No. Well, I do wear a shirt that says "I am the writer of That Texas Blood," but no, nobody's come up to me. The comic shop owner has sometimes said to somebody if they're in the shop, like, "Oh, this is Chris."
Yeah.
He writes the comic, but nobody yet. It's cool. I actually, my girlfriend, she was talking with a friend of hers who lives in Connecticut, and she was saying that what is your boyfriend doing? She said, oh, well, he writes a comic called Texas Blood, and because her boyfriend also reads comics, and she told him, and he was like, oh my god, I love that comic. Which is really cool to hear, because obviously it's like a random person to me. So to hear that this random person is like into our comic is really cool.
Absolutely.
But you do hear things like that, which is really fun.
I do feel like comics is one of the industries where you have to make it like you have to get really high up that ladder to have that moment because, it's not like you're an actor and it's not like you're drawing yourself into these comics,
Yeah.
It's a lot of behind the scenes stuff.
I mean, it's definitely different than it was in the 70s when it was, you didn't necessarily know what the people looked like.
Right.
Or before then or after then or whatever. But like I feel like social media obviously helps because we all have our like avatars and whatever.
Again, I mean that goes back to what I was saying about like, I can hop on Twitter and, send a message to Doc Shaner and, hear back from him. So which is pretty wild. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always interact with people who message me and
I think that goes a real long way, I mean, when you support the fans that are supporting you like that, then what ends up happening is no matter what you go on to do, people are like, hey, you know what? I want to support Chris in his next project. Yeah. And so you start to build that following, and it's really built by just creating those relationships with people, and however small they are, for someone out there, it's not small. So
yeah.
How we doing, Wes?
Oh man, I don't know this thing.
Oh boy.
I
think it's smart. I love it. Contrast.
All right, R2. I'm not hearing you, Wes. You got that. You got robot talk going on again, like last week.
Better
Woo, woo, woo. There it is. Well, no, nothing, man. You're grumbly.
See if we can figure it out.
Yeah, we'll give him a chance. We'll give him a chance. So what is on your read pile right now? What are your top books? Like when you go to your comic shop, what are the books that you're like, I want to read this right now?
Well, right now I really like Noctera. I like Noctera is just sort of it has like a very fun sort of Stephen King thing going on, which I really like. I'm really digging Good Asian, which I just read the other day. Nightwing is one that I pick up. Immortal Hulk, always Immortal Hulk.
Yeah. No, still the same, Wes.
I like Superman Red and Blue.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of anthologies, so I'm a little bit biased there, but I like a good anthology.
Yeah, I've been getting pretty much all of them consistently. Sometimes I'll miss an issue here and there, but I even got Carnage, Black, White, and Blood, I think it's called.
Well, see, that's the beauty of an anthology. You can miss an issue and more or less be okay.
Yeah, I mean, this one just had Greg Smallwood art,
and
I'm a big fan of his, and then I also said it had Chris Mooneyham, and I'm like, sold. So I got it. I'm not a huge Carnage guy. Maybe he's gotten more expanded.
Cates has definitely fleshed out the symbiote world tenfold in the last couple years.
Yeah, I going to the comic shop, you see that there's like symbiote stuff happening. But
everywhere.
It feels like sort of with X-Men stuff to me, where it's like if you're not reading, you'll never get into it just because it seems sort of impenetrable. Just because there's a lot of stuff.
It is very intimidating, because he's done his Venom run, he's got Absolute Carnage, and then he's got King in Black, and it all kind of like fits in together. But I will say, I was able to read King in Black with a very minimal background knowledge of whatever else was going on, and it really still flowed pretty well for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll have to check it out. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the anthology comics, I like the Wolverine one that's coming out.
Yeah.
Again, pretty much every issue of that. Batman Black and White, gotten every issue of that because that's just like constantly perennial favorite.
Yeah, and I
Constantly
know there's
coming
a
out.
Wonder Woman, black,
Yeah, that one
white,
looks
and
great too.
gold, or something like that coming out.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little, it's a little strange that it's the blue and red one it's like a little bit of a stretch in terms of like the colors,
Right,
just because black and white is obviously black and white.
right.
But it's just I love that it's an anthology, and I also the colors look cool, so it's like all right.
Right.
But yeah,
It
the
still
Wonder
has
Woman,
that minimalist effect, you know.
yeah, exactly. But I've been liking the anthologies. There was a Dan Waters story in issue 1 that I absolutely loved. It was really good. I really am looking forward to reading the Rich Dueck story, which he's been teasing, which Joe Quinones did the art for.
Right.
I'm really looking forward to that. And obviously Batman 89 and Superman 78, which
Oh yeah,
Joe Quinones
yeah.
is
I
doing
keep
the art for
forgetting.
89.
I keep forgetting that they're continuing the Batman 89 universe until I'll see they'll post some art from it, and I'm just like excited all over again that is going to be a thing. So that's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it very much. Just so we can see Billy D. Williams as Two-Face.
Yeah, because he was cut out of all the sequels. So I do know if you ever saw Lego Batman, he did reprise his Two-Face role in Lego Batman for, the little blips that he was on screen.
Yeah. Well, I met him at a convention some years ago, and I asked him about that. I was like,
cool.
what would your Two-Face have been kind of question or whatever, and he was very nice to me and humored me. And he just said that he was really excited to play the role because, obviously the role wasn't written for, a black man. It's very, it's...
Well, at the time, that was a very bold casting choice.
Yeah, and I think he was great in the part as Harvey Dent. It would have been really nice to have seen him become Two-Face, but unfortunately they decided to give it to a white guy, Tommy Lee Jones, who's great, but it's it's a different performance than we would have seen from Billy D. Williams, which probably would have been much more serious and grounded.
I was just going to say definitely much more grounded for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't even say it's comic booky. It's cartoony is what it is.
Right. Yep.
It's, there's something to enjoy in those movies, I guess, to a certain extent, even just in terms of nostalgia, but they're definitely lesser than, in my opinion.
Yeah,
the Joel Schumacher movies I'm talking about.
No, I knew what you meant. I do think I do have a appreciation for the later movies, just because of how ambitious they really were. I mean, you got to give them credit for just shooting his shot. He tried it. No one else was doing anything like that.
Yeah,
well, it's pretty campy, but like. If you think I enjoy laugh at every single Arnold Schwarzenegger ice pun, like you got it all wrong. I think every single one is they're just hilarious to me. It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I'm convinced that they knew exactly what kind of movie they were making.
Oh, they for sure.
I don't think that which, and when you look at it that way, it's like, okay, yeah, it is enjoyable, but it's still not as good as like the Tim Burton Batman movies.
No. But I can still enjoy it. It's like a lot of people will hate on the scene where it's like, like it'll show like the gauntlet and then the shoulder and then the chest pad with the bat nipple. And like he's just making fun of that classic Rambo suit up where, he's strapping the guns on him and they're just poking fun at that. And I think that, didn't really get picked up by a lot of people. And, a lot of people can't get past the bat nipples, which, I admit it's hard to get past, but you almost have to see it as like he tried to mix the Tim Burton universe with the Adam West universe, and it kind of blew up into this giant mess, but it's still an enjoyable mess to me. I can enjoy that mess.
Yeah, it's definitely a weirdo movie universe, but it's interesting. I love that, for example, Batman and Robin fall into a vat of melted mint chocolate chip ice cream at some point in the movie, which is it's pretty great. They're interesting movies. I'll
never call them my favorite movies, but I can enjoy them. I can enjoy.
Yeah, I also I like the whole this sort of authoritarian architecture, all the Atlas shrugged sort of
Mhm.
people holding up buildings and stuff. I think that stuff's cool. I think that's really a cool aspect of those movies.
Yeah,
Yeah, so there's definitely stuff to appreciate them. I think that about movies in general. It's even if you're watching a bad movie, I think there's things
I'm
to
not much
appreciate
of a
them.
critic. If I can be entertained, I'll more or less enjoy a movie, even if I can
Yeah,
sit there and be like, "This is not a good movie," but I I I enjoyed it. It was good enough. It
yeah.
entertained me.
Well, there's a movie called Robot Monster from the '50s, which is not a good movie, but I really enjoyed the movie
There you go.
for whatever
Exactly.
reason. And I can tell you that when I saw Roman, who is the villain of the movie, who is not a human, he's a Roman, obviously. Um, yeah, and when I saw him at New York Comic Con a couple years ago, I was more excited by seeing him than I was by seeing anybody else.
That's
So,
awesome. I love it.
Darth Vader's back.
I know.
Did you see any of them?
Yeah, it's still coming through electronic, man.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Well, that might be as good a time as any, I suppose. Seems like
Yeah,
that's just going to be an issue. But Chris, it has been a pleasure. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to,
of course.
sit and chat with us. And everyone, look out for That Texas Blood. It's back in the shops on June 30th.
June 30th, we have two great covers, great Jacob Phillips cover and a great Mark Aspinall cover. Yeah, I mean, we're coming back June 30th. I'm very excited to hear what everybody thinks of this new arc. I think that's pretty exciting for me. I
Yeah,
hope other people feel excited about it as well.
absolutely.
But yeah, I'm very excited about it. And thank you very much for having me on. I'm happy to be
Hey.
here and happy to chat with you guys in person.
Hey, it's been a pleasure, Chris. Really, thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you to Wes, who's been in our corner since day one.
Yeah,
Really, since day negative 57 or whatever.
Yep.
But he's really
I am
been.
almost positive that Wes is the one that put That Texas Blood on my radar, and I mean, that's another thing that the community is really good for. It's like, hey, if you heard of this book, you've really got to check this out. So that's what it's all about.
Yeah. But thank you so much.
Absolutely, it's our pleasure. All right. Well, till next time, you guys.
All right.
Look at that.